All righty, we're back. Want to go over some things with you that will help you in your work of life coaching. I want to go over some steps for um, effective life coaching. How to recognize who to coach, how to go about coaching, and we're going to go over basically 5 steps I think that helps with effective life coaching. One is to clarify the goal. Um, the second one is um, to make it real. Third one is to strategize against steps, accountability. Sean, are we not streaming? Vicky, you may have stopped us and it lags. Streaming. And if it's streaming, they can hear me going back and forth with you. Did you refresh your browser? You can hear audio? So that means people can hear me going back and forth with you? Hello? 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 Sean, you're not streaming, are you? Wow, great. We're back for another session to get started. I want to go over 5 simple strategies for life coaching that we found to be very effective for life coaches. You got a chance for me previously to speak my heart as I went over several things that I think are very essential. I sweat a lot, so just get excited about what I believe in. Even if I'm not, I'm on as I'm coaching other people, I'm on a coaching episode to lose weight and working that process very diligently. And so I'm treading and trimming pounds at a massive rate. And so I'm excited about this evolution of weight loss. And so as I encourage my clients to be disciplined, I must walk in discipline too. There are 5 simple steps I want to, effective steps that I think that are great strategies in life coaching. One, clarifying one's goal is step one. I'm going to go over the steps and read them, and then I'll explain to them. Number 2, make it real. Number 3, strategize action steps, and we kind of discussed that a little bit. 4 is accountability, and the 5th one is celebrate each step. Now, let's take a look in detail of these things so you'll understand. Clarifying goal, the initial step in your coaching strategy is specifically with your client an objective and a measure the ways in which you want to go on. One is let's clearly define your goal. Reiterating what we talked about. Let's talk about what the goal is. Let's lay it out. Make sure the client fully understands what your goal is to work with them and to make them and how to get them. When your client is clear and you're clear, there is no room for mistakes when you are clear with them. And so you want to make sure that they clearly understand. And number 2 is to make the goal real. I talk about realistic goals. Sometimes subconsciously we make plans that are imaginary, that does not have the prospect of even being possible. And so when working with them, you want to work with them and work with all of their senses, work with their abilities, and help them push them. But you want to accept realistic goals with realistic timelines. When people set unrealistic goals and unrealistic timelines, they shoot for unrealistic things. And guess what? They don't happen. And then they become frustrated over the process, and you lose them because realistically, they didn't set realistic goals, nor did you work with them with honesty and integrity to facilitate realistic goals. And you got to be careful of you setting unrealistic goals for your client as well. Third thing, it's strategizing the action steps for achieving the goal. Now it's clear and measurable goals, put them in place. And the next step is coaching in this coaching strategy is to work with your client to develop a plan to reach their goals. What are the first things that they need to do is develop a time frame of completion or implementation of their goals. And so what I'm going to do with that client is I'm going to sit down with them and we're going to decide a strategy. What's the timeline? How are we going to do it? When are we going to implement it? And how we're going to make it happen? We clearly articulate that. And what is the ending date? What's our expiration date? When are we going to finish this thing? When are we going to accomplish it? When are we going to make your goals that you've desired and you always wanted to happen? When is the ending date? What's our target? We never start a task without an effective preliminary projected ending date. We want to know when this thing's going to start. No one likes to do a car loan that you keep making payments every month and don't know when it ends. I got $15,000 I'm going to pay on. I got a 24-month payment. So that means my payments are going to be such and such. And I see the end of this journey. It motivates you as you start seeing accomplishments, as you get closer and closer to the goals. And so that's one of the things we want to do. And then one of the things is to celebrate each step towards the goal. Last but not least, I want to talk about celebrating each step. But let's deal with, before we deal with that, I want to deal with, as I talk to you about, is number 4. And I almost like to skip 4, going to 5. Number 4 is your coaching strategy must include accountability to clients. You got to hold them accountable, and it must include that. Let's read what I got here. The 4th step in coaching is strategizing them and helping them be held accountable for each step along the way of their goal. Keep track of the commitments that they make, and you want to come back with them and hold them accountable for empowerment. The results in your client gaining important confidence and ability to reach their goals with each action and step, because you hold them accountable. You come back to them and say, okay, let's see what we're doing. Where are we at such and such period? Did you do such and such? They need that sense of accountability. So often people go at things laissez-faire without a clear, definitive sense of accountability. Please understand that if you're going to be effective, that accountability must be, how do you evaluate how they're doing? How do you evaluate that we're reaching our goal? How do you evaluate whether we're accomplishing? And that must be something that you discuss with them, so it doesn't catch them all willy-nilly out of the fly. I was like, I didn't know that this was it. No, you do, because we clearly define the steps that you need to make in order to reach a sense of accountability. Now, last step I talked about is celebrating each step towards their goal. So when you and the client is doing good and they've reached a goal, a margin, we want to celebrate. We develop a strategy to celebrate, to acknowledge, and what that client would do. Sometimes they say, well, I'm going to reward myself. You acknowledge, make sure you celebrate. It's a big deal every time that they do it. Now, you remember with children, when they walk and they do well, you say, oh, Juba, you did good. Little Juju, little Missy, little Linda, little Lily, you did good. Celebrate the accomplishment. And we develop goals that they treat themselves when they reach their goal. We celebrate accomplishments. We acknowledge and we celebrate those goals. It motivates the client to be able to move forward to other areas. These are very important concepts in working this process of doing what I call life coaching. Now, I want to kind of cover some things that I think will be effective with us. There are some mistakes that happen with life coaches that many of them don't even realize that they make. And I want to help you understand some mistakes in coaching that will help you. The first big mistake that many life coaches make is they interrupt the client with a desire to assist them or save time. Let them talk. Let them begin to express what is on their heart and stop interrupting them. Let them talk. Let them share with you their dreams, their vision. Most clients need time, a safe place to talk, about particular issues that they are experiencing. Some coaches feel that it's not necessary or beneficial for their client to talk at length, in particular about particular issues or their problems. Trust me, it's one of the great things. They begin to unload. You can get to sometimes the real problem by allowing them to be able to talk and unload themselves. Don't be trying to rush the time. You know, we only got 30 minutes, we got an hour. No, we got 2 hours. And then the coach is doing all of the talking. Let those people talk. Many people have no one to communicate to. It's building connection. It's building a connection between you and your client. Sometimes, some sessions, they just want to unload, to be able to talk to you and to communicate. Do not be afraid of that moment. Maximize the moment of your client talking to you and you listening. Sometimes what people need to motivate them, to help them go through the maze of everything coming at them, is to be able to unload. They can't talk to their spouse without being judged. They can't talk to the person that maybe their business partner without being criticized about their previous mistakes. That's what oftentimes happens, because people that understand all of the meticulous amount of mistakes, when you talk vision or ideas, remind you of every mistake you've made. And if they don't verbally remind you, they indirectly remind you of what you did not accomplish or how many times you've done it. It doesn't matter how many times you fell off the horse. You need someone that'll listen to you, that'll talk about how many times you fell off the horse. Because maybe the sixth time you understand the steps you made a mistake in getting on the horse, how to get on the saddle, how to ride the horse, how to pull the reins on the horse. You understand it better. And so sometimes people need outside persons that they can communicate. Men, many times, or women can't communicate with someone outside of their marriage relationship without other feelings of intimacy and other things being created. And many of them don't have best friends. Their marriage does not allow them to have same-sex associations or other sex associations without there being conflict. A brother says that he has a friend and she's a woman and he wants to talk to her. His wife may say, "What you doing talking to her?" Well, vice versa. If a woman has a friend that's a male that she feels comfortable talking to and she begins to talk to him and he says, "What are you doing talking to that man for?" And so many times we are felt. And the challenge is with our same sex, many times in the traditional thing, it's such a competition. So you don't want to share your weakness with another man. So it's a competition. It's a camaraderie of men and manhood. The women sometimes want to share her mistakes with other women because she believes that other women might tell. She may not have a best friend at all that she can unload. And so their time of talking with you will help them grab clarity and perspective and give you a pulse on where that client is at that time. Number two, do not use the 80-20 rule. Coaches sometimes do too much talking. The client has to do answers. It is the job of the coach to guide the client to find their own answers. Listen to me. You are guiding them because if you give them a truth, they have to go through a gestation period to whether that truth is applicable to them. And many times it's laced with your opinion. Your challenge is to guide them through what they're doing for them to determine what steps they should make of their own accord. So, for example, what I'm dealing with, and I've dealt with as a counselor, people that are dealing with domestic violence situations, and I can tell Jill, I said, "Jill, he's going to beat you in the head again," and you just keep allowing him to be physically abusive to you. And so she hears what I say. And she says, "Well, he says he loves me, and he cares. It's going to be okay. He bought me some flowers, and he hit me in my mouth and bust my lip open, and he cut me almost an inch of my heart, my major valve, and I told the doctor I fell on the knife in the kitchen, and it popped up and stabbed me, and he just such a good man, and it's going to work." Well, we've done this over and over again. So one of the things I ask her is, instead of telling her you need to leave him, I say to you, I get her to help work with her and say, "Well, how many times have he hit you?" And she says, "How many times have you been in the hospital?" "Well, 7 times. Do you think it may be possible that this might happen again because it's happened so many times?" "Well, yeah." "Well, each time, does it get worse?" "Well, yeah, it really does get worse. Because the first time he just pushed me and I broke my leg. I fractured but now my leg's broke, and so it progressively gets worse." What happens with your children at the time? Have you ever thought of what you would do if your children got taken? Have you had any? Yeah, they have. And so they start to think. You've not told them what to do. You simply guided them on their pursuit. You asked the right questions. The right question and allow them to answer you will help them guide and allow them to talk. Listen 80% of the time. Talk 20% of the time. I'm going to say that again. Listen 80% of the time. Talk 20% of the time. As a coach, your job is to listen to the client without judging or having an agenda. Your job is not to be judgmental. Keep little coy looks. Set a law with your face. I don't care what I hear. I'm neutral. I remember early days as a clinical psychologist working with people or counselor, and a Christian counselor, and I've done so many things. And a gentleman came to me and told me, he said, I'm coming to see you. He came and sat me, and we were talking, and he said something to me. He said, well, I finally did it. I said, you finally did what? He said, I killed her. I killed my wife and my children. I said, oh, okay. What did you do after you killed them? Because I went home and ate some Fruit Loops. Fruit Loops? How were the Fruit Loops? He said, well, they were pretty good. How did you feel after you killed them? I don't feel anything. I said, well, what should you do? What's your next step? I don't know. What happens when a murder happens? You call the police. So, don't you think we need to talk to an officer? Yeah, you're right. Said, so you're going to call the police? He says, yeah. And he called the police. They picked him up. And the whole time, I was calm, cool, and collected. In that session, he told me how he murdered them, and it was an act of passion because he used a knife. Guns are not always an act of passion. To do it from a distance is really not. But to stab them each and mutilate their bodies the way they are. Now, if I would have responded, I might have gotten killed myself. That's an extreme situation. But one of the things that, in reading one of the memoirs or letters that he wrote me from prison, the thing that he said to me is that he appreciated the fact that I didn't judge him. I helped him evaluate the decision that he needed to make. But even in death, I did not judge him. Interesting. You're going to meet all kind of people working with them. The number 3 things is the fear that you will fail as a professional coach. It can be very scary doing this. You know, there are questions you ask. How do you get clients? Will I know enough to be able to help them? Will I get enough clients to make enough money to be able to survive? What does it take to set up a practice? These are common fears that new life coaches may have. This training recognizes these fears, and hopefully we will help you overcome a variety of them on different platforms. We'll provide a complete system for you in helping you with ongoing support and classes to help you. This is not the only training class that I recommend. We'll deal with things. We're going to help you with classes on how to set up and market your practice. How to deal with first client jitters. You're going to deal with this because you're a little nervous, you know, how to deal with those things. And one of the things I do when I'm meeting first clients is, first thing I do is I allow them to talk. Sometimes they don't say much, but as they warm up to you, they will become comfortable. You got to be able to bounce off ideas with others that are experienced coaches, and talk with people that are in there. Establish friendships with other coaches. Develop when you're taking classes like this and you're able to chat with people or get numbers of people that you are, and y'all bounce ideas off. And there's so much more. But I need you first to have confidence and to believe in yourself. This is really difficult for a lot of people, especially this is one of my challenges as a life coach. Really hard. My wife always talked to me about not managing the fixer in you. Coaches may feel that they have to perfectly and logically and realistically answer for their clients, that they will give them advice and tell them what they think is best. Many times we think we have all of the answer. Change is hard for everyone, but change will not be long-lasting, or will they stick with it if the client does not initiate it themselves. So you can't be the fixer. You've got to help the client see where they're at. Sometimes there is within me, excuse me, a growing desire for me to fix, to give an answer. I've got to help them walk and find their answer. You've got to help the client get to the point of seeing where they're at. You don't have all the answers. They don't have all the answers. You're going to help them get to that point. The other thing is not putting yourself in your client's world. Seeing your client lives from their perspective is the best way that you can help them. Forcing your client to adopt your approach, your principles, your life, your beliefs is not effective. I'm a Christian. I work with clients, and some of them are not Christians. My coaching is not to get them to believe my Judeo-Christian vantage point. My beliefs, my mores, are not necessarily their mores. I cannot, again, put them in my world. I must allow them to coexist in their world. Their world is built with friends, people, networks, associates, people that they've built in the infrastructure they're in. I cannot get them to adapt to my world and think that it's feasible. It will not work. They have their own world. They have their own life that they live. I must let them live their life and work their world and be supportive of them as best as possible. Also, number 6, not watching or listening to subtle clues. Sometimes there are clues that are made and the counselor misses it. Not hearing or watching the small clues that a client give you as a coach can be detrimental. It is important to them and you that you challenge them to really walk and want to make their lives positive and better. Get them to be able to see the clues that they made in their own personal life and in the session. Effective listening will help the coach determine what feeling or the real reason behind the client's actual words. Do not be led down a rabbit hole because You can't get to the real problem dealing with that situation or take advantage of the opportunities that are presented by hearing the story behind the story. Okay, the client proposes one idea, but listen. Well, my wife is the problem. Okay, just listen a little farther. You may feel like my wife is the problem because she's so insecure. Well, why is she insecure? What did you do to create the sudden phenomenon for insecurity? Is her insecurity it's because she's come from a family of insecure people? Or are there factors that exist in the relationship that may be problems that you have? Maybe the person suffers with faithfulness, which means there's a problem with committing. They're not committed to anything or anybody or anything. And so the problem may not, they may have just told you about their wife, but the issue may be a commitment issue of committing. They don't commit to anything. Then the seventh thing that I want to deal with is not knowing the right questions to ask. Sometimes this is really scary for the counselor because the coach, because you don't know what questions to ask. Asking the right questions is one of the reasons why coach training is important. Getting with other persons and talking, because you want to be able to ask the right questions. If a client just wanted advice, they could talk to their best friend, their coworker, their mother. They don't need you to be their mother alone. They need you to be their coach. They need you to push them to greatness. Ask the right questions, to regurgitate the truth that they give you, and propose ideas that will chart them down a certain pathway. Now, is what you're doing impossible? No, it's not. Can you do it? Absolutely. Do you have the wherewithal to do it? I believe that you're called to do it and you can do it. And it is very possible for you to do it. Now, there are 10 things that no coach should ever do. There are things that, as a coach, you should never do. Ready? You should never coach family or friends. It's just not ethical. Even if you're in the beginning stages of your practice, it's one of the worst things you can do because they share things that they're going through, things that are going on. You just shouldn't do it. One of the worst things that you can do. You shouldn't treat life coaching as a hobby. This is something you should be learning, eating, reading, everything that you can read on life coaching and to do it better. This is not something you do as a hobby. You should do it as though you're called to it. And it's not a side gig. It is the gig, even if you do have another job. You should never be in a position that you refuse to shut up. I want to ask you this question. Do you know why we ask questions as a life coach? You may say, yeah, it's because we want to get the client to think differently and motivate them to answer questions that will position them in the place where they need to be. If you're doing all the talking, the client can't think. The answer to their problems is in them. They have to communicate it to you, and you have to guide them. One of the other mistakes they shouldn't counselors do, life coaches, ignore ongoing learning. Learning should be a continual process, even after this workshop, after you hear me teach. You ought to be always learning, always signing up for a class, seeing where life coaching is going on, going to life coaching summit, always learning stuff, getting in material, reading other things. I'm always listening to leadership stuff, on self-help stuff. I'm downloading audiobooks. Audible is my friend. I'm always eating from different sources. I'm listening to different lectures. You want to be a little bit knowledgeable of everything. I'm studying in my repertoire now. I'm going through biblical questions, because I do spiritual counseling that people often have. I'm listening to the New and the Old Testament. I'm going Black history, African American history, a world history, philosophy. I'm listening to a plateau of various audiobooks, some casually, some that I call mind candy. They're just fun. They're fictional. I'm listening to Logical Digest. I'm looking at the digest. I'm looking at scientific stuff. I'm always eating so that you will be well-rounded. I'm looking at politics. I'm looking at other religions. I'm seeing what they believe, what other cultures do. I want to be acclimated. The learning process is not solely this class. You should expose yourself to as much vetable information that's up out there so that you will be well versed. One of the other things they do is they offer unsolicited advice. Listen to me. Be careful that you don't target areas that are sensitive. They didn't invite you for those things. It has nothing to do with their pursuit of their goal. Don't give him sports tips on playing the game and he's come from relationship team just because he's a sports star. Stay with what you need to stay with. One of the coaches oftentimes do that really scares me is this, um, and it gets me. You copy what other life coaches do and try to duplicate it in your market. Now, you're not $150,000, $200,000 an hour coach, or you charge per client a year. You might be a $50, $75, $100 an hour coach. You're starting out. Please know your target market. Don't try to make yourself bigger than who you are. Be who you are as a coach. Keep it real with your clients. Don't pretend that life is awesome 24/7. It's unrealistic. People don't believe you. They need to know that you that the coach has good days and bad days, as they can identify with it. Well, I'm going to say this. Be careful that you don't ask the client for help, because you're coaching with them. You ask them to hook you up with something or help you do something. You transfer yourself to the needy person. Hook me up with some tickets for the game. You're a basketball star, or see, can you help me get a loan because you're a banker? Never do that. Never, never, never do that. And never try to do everything, because you're not good at everything as a coach, life coach. Number 10. Many of coaches want to advance their business, and they choose social media. Sometimes they've got every coaching outlet. They think Twitter, they've got Instagram, they've got everything. That's not good for everything. Use social media with a strategy, because you may not build a following in all of those. Find one that may work for you and build a following, and then build a following in others. Don't be all over the page. Okay, you said that you're on Twitter and you're a tweeter. but you only have 5,000 followers. One of my Twitter accounts, I think I have over 50,000 followers. It's billing each week. There may be 60 or 70 now. But you want to build a following. In my Facebook page, I have several accounts, and almost all of them have over 5,000 people and several thousand followers that follow the words that come out of my mouth. You've got to be careful that when doing this, that you do it with a strategy, that you don't just vicariously do it. You're building the market, and so you want to do it with a strategy. Now, I want to deal with some things that I think will help you in this segment, and then our next segment will deal with finance. This is one of the things. There are some red flags, things that you shouldn't do, clients that you should never work with. The first red flag is that when you feel a red flag, you're talking with somebody and you just, in your gut, you feel like you shouldn't work with them. Whether it's the initial talk or they email you, don't work with them. The client that's so busy, always doing something, don't have time to improve on themselves, don't take them. The third, the client who is quitting therapy to work with you. They're leaving that therapist, they're leaving the person they're working with to come work with you. Don't do them. The client that bashes their last coach, don't work with them. They're not good for business. Because if they bash them, they will bash you. If a person is leaving the therapist, they're coming to you, they're usually avoiding dealing with the situation. And that will not be good for you. The client is so busy, they don't have time to allocate an hour to 2 hours for you to talk with them or to work on themselves a week or an hour to give themselves daily. They're not a good candidate for what you're working with. The client that struggles with basic accountability, being held accountable, that get offended, that you got to work with just extreme kid gloves. They always say they want help. They want people, whatever you can do to help me, I want to be better. And then when you do it, they get offended, and they have to get themselves together to be able to receive what you're saying. Those are clients that you refuse immediately. They say, well, it's the way you said it. And then you said a different way, and they still get offended because they are uncomfortable with people dealing with their issues. They cry, they hurt, they go through the emotional jargon. They reserve their feelings, and you can tell they're just ticked or hurt. And then they say, I'm just hurt. I hurt people. Those are clients you need to turn down immediately. That they struggle with the basic level of accountability. 6, the client that refuses to move. They're in the same position. You're talking with them. They don't want to change. You can tell them that they've been doing the same thing, and you start working with them. At that time, you need to terminate working with that client. They're not going to become any better. They don't want to change. Now, no one likes to deal with these. No one likes to identify these areas. No one likes to cut a client. We like working with people, but you got to know when to hold and you got to know when to fold. Counseling is a unique, and life coaching is a unique resource that God has given us, or that the Creator, whomever He might be. I'm a Christian, so I believe it's Jehovah God, but whomever you believe, it's a unique perspective, and it's a great opportunity. But these steps are given to help you in your practice. Starting a new practice can be very scary as you are developing. So in my next section, I'm going to talk about how to build a business, how to market it, how to charge, how to make money, and how to capitalize on the opportunity of doing it and to do it effectively, and to build a winning practice. So I thank you for this session. It's been a wonderful session as I've talked with you, and hopefully the things that I've shared with you have been a great insight to you. And thank you once again. Thank you, technicians. Thank you, staff, for helping us bring this stream. And we'll be back a little bit later. Thank you so very much. Have a great day.